my smile is big this morning, Keith, because being able to show somebody and have them come into my studio. This is my space and my heralded space. It's almost like church for me, right? And so what I've been doing is I've been going through the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day. Anybody out there that's listening right now, they can hear me talk about Keith. You can't see him. You'll see him here in a bit. But Keith, what we just walked through, I've been talking to him about workflow. Workflow and system is probably one of the most important things that you'll ever have in your entire life. Without a workflow and without a system, it's simply an idea, and a lot of times you forget the ideas. Once you write it down, you put it on paper, now you have a system, you can replicate that over and over and over again. People talk to me about podcasts and they're like, oh, I want to start a podcast. I want to start a podcast. And I'm like, okay, so let's break it down. Let's get you a system and a workflow. So when you can walk in, from the time I walk into the studio to the time I'm actually rolling, which we're rolling right now, it could be 7-8 minutes possibly. And then it's not cumbersome to me. It's exciting. I can come in and I could produce an episode like what we're doing today. We are sticking with the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day, which today is Proverbs 2. Yesterday I didn't do, which was Proverbs 1, but it was so fresh and so clean. So I'm going to be coming out with that episode. We'll probably record that later on today. So the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day, it blows me away that every single time I come to the word, what happens is I first start reading the word, then it starts reading me. It's 3,000-year-old wisdom that is applicable every single day. You guys are all going to meet my buddy Keith Hale. He's in the room right now, one of the top real estate developers in the world, and going to be working in the life coaching space and healing, not from a theory standpoint, but also from an experience standpoint. Why don't you say we hop right in to Proverbs 2, and this one blew me away. So I want you to just write this down if you can, or if you have a pen, write it down. If you, I would suggest that. But there's just 3 words today: if, then, thus. And when I read this is the first time that I ever read Proverbs 2 like this. I always read it for the verbs, and I looked at the action words in it, and some of the action words in Proverbs 2 was accept, store up, turn, apply, call out, cry aloud, search out, understand, find, and give. Those were the things that I thought that stuck out to me all the time. But this morning, where God gave me was if, then, thus. And I had to look at the difference between the 2 words then and thus. And what it was if you do this, then this will happen. If you continue on in that, thus will be the outcome. And it was incredible to me to be able to see it. And he ran it down in Proverbs 2 like this. So let's jump right into, so think of this: if, then, thus. If is the option, giving you the option. If you do this, you don't have to do it, but if you choose to, here's the option. Then is the action that you put to it. And thus is the conclusion. And imagine if we just thought about it in that way: if, then, thus. Option, you're given an option. You want to do the right thing, you might not want to do the right thing. Here's the action that you can do. If you do that action over and over and over again, thus will turn out the conclusion. Start with number 1, which is if. Accept, store up, listen, apply, call out, cry aloud, look, and search. But it starts with accept. So if we listen, then we can accept. If we accept, we can store up. If we store up, then we can listen more. We can apply it. We can call out. We can cry aloud. We can look for it, and we can search for it. Right? And in verse 1 through 4, it takes us right through this. My son, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you, turning your ear to wisdom and applying your heart to understanding, indeed, if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as silver and search for it as hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God, for the Lord gives wisdom. In verse number 5, when he says then, right? So if I do all these things, if I accept it, store up, listen, apply, call out, cry aloud, look, and search for it, then, and what is then? Then you'll understand the fear of the Lord. And what is the fear of the Lord? It's just the respect. So if we take the word fear and we take the word respect, those 2 are interchangeable. But most of the time we think of fear as being something that I need to be in fear and trembling. We don't need to be in fear and trembling. It's just respect. How could I respect my friend Keith? By spending time with him. The more and more time that I spend with him, the more and more that I see that his words and his actions are in line. And when his words or actions are in line, which is not common in these days, because most of the time people give me a highlight reel and then they'll be like, yo, but that wasn't how it actually happened. And then you get behind the scenes. But when you see that consistency, what starts to happen is you start to trust, you start to respect. And so what God wants us to do is simply respect him. And when we do that, then we will understand the fear of the Lord. And watch this. We'll find knowledge. We'll get knowledge and understanding. We'll understand what true success is. We'll understand what right and just is. We'll have discretion, and wisdom will ultimately save us. So as we go through with this, finding knowledge, getting knowledge and understanding. And in verse 7, I never read it like this in Proverbs 2. In verse number 7, it says, he holds success in store for the upright. He is a shield for those who walk blameless. People always talk about success, but a lot of times they won't define it. And in this, it says he holds success in store for the upright. Well, who does he hold it in store for the upright? How do we become upright? Let's go back to it. Accept, store up, listen, apply, call out, cry aloud, look for it and search for it. His word, right? And so when we go to then we will find knowledge, get knowledge, understanding, success, understand what's right and just, and that's in verse 9 and 10. Then you will understand what is right and just and fair, every good path, for wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. In verse number 11, this one is a big one. Discretion is wild, because I believe that discretion is just understanding, like if you take the right use of knowledge, which is wisdom. So if you take wisdom, then you get then you get knowledge, then you get understanding, then you get insight. Once you have insight into something, guess what happens? Discretion. You have discretion. Oh, this deal is for me. We're both going to laugh. This deal is not for me. Discretion. We could see it from a mile away, but you have to have insight. To have that insight, you got to have understanding. And to have that understanding, you got to have knowledge, but there's no reason to have knowledge unless you have wisdom. How do you get it? From the fear of God. And how do we fear God? By spending time with him, right? And so this part is so amazing to me, and wisdom will save you. And it walks you down in verse 12 through 19. Wisdom will save you from the ways of wicked men, from men whose words are perverse, who have left their straight paths to walk in dark ways, who delight in doing wrong and rejoice in perverseness of evil, whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. How many of us have ever met somebody that we're like, oh my gosh, like, and they didn't start out that way, but their words started it, their actions, their feet led them down to that part. And what it says is that your knowledge won't save you, but the wisdom, the right use of knowledge. And where will we get that? We will get that from the fear of God, and the fear of God will save us. So if I accept, store up, listen, apply, call out, cry aloud, look, and search for wisdom, then I will understand the fear of the Lord. I will find knowledge. I will find understanding. I will understand what success is. I will know what right and just is. I will have discretion, and wisdom will ultimately save me, which will bring me to number 3, which is thus. And I had to look this word up, because thus is not something that I use all the time, because I'm not King James and I'm not Shakespeare. So when I'm looking at thus, I looked at it and it just said the conclusion. The difference between then, meaning a cause and effect, and thus was the conclusion. And so when I looked at that conclusion, in verse 20 through 22, it was very, very simple. Thus, you will walk in the ways of good and keep the path of the righteous. What is righteousness? It's just doing the right thing. But what is the right thing? It's the thing that God tells you to do at that particular time. And how can we know that? By spending time with him. It's not through ritual. It's not through religion. It's not through, oh, I've done this system and now I can work back to it. It's being open to what he has for you on that particular day. In verse number 21, for the upright will live in the land, and the blameless will remain in it, but the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the unfaithful will be torn from it. He made it very, very simple. If you seek out wisdom, you accept it, you store it up, you listen to it, you apply it, you call out, you cry aloud, you look for it, and you search for it, then you will understand the fear of the Lord. You will find knowledge. You will get understanding. You'll understand what success is. You'll have right and you'll understand what right and just is. You'll be given the gift of discretion, which is probably one of the greatest things you can ever do. It'll stop you from doing bad deals. It'll stop you from walking into bad relationships. Discretion. And finally, that wisdom will surround you and it will protect you from the craziness of this world, and thus will bring a conclusion. And here's the conclusion. If you choose God's will, plan, and timing, then he will give you all the tools and opportunities to succeed, protecting you from the pitfalls that come, and thus you will remain in the land that he has designed for you. If, then, thus. If you have an option, then you have to do the action. And thus will be the conclusion. I revel in this every single day, the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day, 3,000-year-old wisdom. How crazy is it, Keith, that 3,000 years ago, this text was written for this day right now. And someone out there that is listening or watching, they're dealing with this right now. And what I want to encourage you is, if you're in the valley, if you're in the dark, if you're struggling with the decision, stop, slow down, and ask yourself those 3 questions. If, then, thus. And just God wants to make it as simple as possible. The corresponding proverb, corresponding day, 3,000-year-old wisdom that transcends all circumstance. My name is Kelly Cardenas, and I'm officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul.